It's 9/11. America is at a point where we are finally coming together as a country. Football is back. We're holding hands. We're spreading the love. No, of course not. This is America. We're going to boo unity. It wasn't about the kneeling or the flag, you silly people. We're going to talk about football coming back and the Texas Chiefs audience reception to a gesture of unity. We are going to talk 9/11, the thousands that were lost, the millions that were affected, and the hundreds of millions around the world that lost their rights as a result of it. Of course, we're going to talk gold. We're going to talk copper. I believe gold is reloading. We'll talk about why. Next week should be an exciting week of drill results. I think that'll be the case for the rest of the year. Tik Tok. We're going to talk Tik Tok. It's interesting. That keeps getting more and more interesting. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Fight the Fed, Mr. Nick Hodge. This is episode 86 of Bizarro World. Nick, how are you? I forgot to mention that Fight the Fed Nick was fighting the Fed without power this week. How's that coming along?
Well, if you've paid attention to the news in the western half of the country at all, you'll know that it's on fucking fire. There's fires everywhere in Oregon and Northern California and Washington. And then there was a windstorm here in Eastern Washington on Monday with winds up to 50 miles an hour that took out power for 20-something thousand people in and around Spokane, some of which was due to wind knocking down infrastructure or knocking down trees that then knocked down infrastructure, or the wind spreading fires quickly that then burned down infrastructure. In some cases, I was reading up to 100 to 200 poles in some communities had to be replaced, and they'll be without power until September 17th or something. So fortunate that we were only without it for 2 days. I had a little bit of fun. I got to spray some starter fluid in the carburetor of the generator, which was fun. Get the freezers going so we didn't lose the meat in there, and put pond water in buckets to go flush the toilets. And I don't mind that, but my wife and kids do. So glad to have it back and have a new appreciation for it once it's back on, because no shower for 2 days isn't fun for anyone.
It's not. And you mentioned, I mentioned that it's 9/11 today. We record on Friday, of course. And so the fact that there's thousands of people that will be without power until the 17th, and they've been without, 4 or 5 days already?
That's right.
Some longer?
That's exactly right.
So we're talking people that have gone without power for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, we have a pandemic where, we're having to fluff numbers to make the return of employment look better than what it actually is. And we have infrastructure all around the country that's crumbling. That if we had a set of politicians that could just come together and agree on anything, we could pass a comprehensive package that would actually be beneficial and would have a lasting positive effect on the country and its citizens. And instead, Congress is still on vacation. Trump is arguing with himself about interviews he did with Mr. Woodward, which, again, there's video of your words and there's audio of the interviews, which is silly. And yet here we are, September 11th, 2020. Where are we, Nick? 19 years later, as it goes with privacy and rights and this fourth turning that we are in the midst of. Do you think that was one of those, and I know the answer is obviously it's a rhetorical question, but do you think that
Sure.
that was one of those events and catalysts that shaped the way that the new generation viewed America and the world?
I mean, that's the year I graduated high school, Gerardo, if you want to think about it that way. So it's been 19 years since. A couple of quick things. The first person who wasn't born during 9/11 has already perished in wars fighting as a result of 9/11, which is a very interesting sentence to me. I won't call it a statistic because that's in poor taste. And you had things in the past decade, which it's been a decade now, like WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden, that have cast transparency and clarity on exactly what governments were doing in response to. And then you could quickly draw parallels to maybe rights being taken away as a result of this pandemic that those of us that have now living through and seen what happened as a result of 9/11 know you don't get back, right? Like the police aren't giving back their militarized vehicles. The NSA is not stopping snooping on phone calls, for example. Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are still in exile, right? The status quo when the powers at be don't like them, and they don't like you showing what they're truly doing, as it comes to privacy and your rights. And I guess those would be most of my thoughts, but the wars are ongoing. And of course, the whole thing is sort of rooted in religion, which is a bit weird and foreign to me anyway. But nonetheless, here we are. It's nearly 20 years later. Certainly feel bad for those who lost people and have the utmost respect for the first responders. And I don't know. You asked where are we now? And you said it was a rhetorical question. My answer would have been Kamala Harris is the VP candidate. We haven't come all that far.
Where are we now? Let's talk about the Supreme Court decision. I believe it was last week, which I failed to mention last week, and I meant to, that basically vindicated Snowden and said that, yes, indeed, the lawsuit brought by the ACLU saying that the wiretapping, which we already knew was illegal, the Supreme Court ruled it illegal. And my immediate thought is, well, if we have a young man who's now an older man in Russia, exiled, facing criminal charges because he exposed something illegal, well, two thoughts. One, shouldn't he be pardoned because he did the right thing, what your mom and dad teach you to do when you're young, when you're little? And two, if it was illegal and somebody broke the law, then who the fuck is going to prison for it?
Is that a rhetorical question? Because the answer is nobody, at least, not right now, unless heads are going to roll. And, we've said for years that Edward Snowden did the right thing. I think it was clear to a lot of people. And I think that's, underscores the disunity that you alluded to in the beginning of the segment here.
That really also, aside from the millions affected with everything from, cancer to respiratory diseases, the people that lost their life, the people that lost freedoms, the countries that had nothing to do with it and citizens of those countries around the world that got their, cities and countries bombed back a couple of generations as a result. That, 9/11 really kicked off the last great overreach of government to expand the deficit in the budget. Now, here we are in 2020, and here's some fun stats. And I promise everybody, we'll get to gold and juniors and how you can make money here in just a little bit. But, it's 9/11. It's important to talk about this stuff. I'll share a personal story. I worked in Manhattan when 9/11 happened. I managed a retail store, supervised a retail store, and I happened to be on vacation in Mexico at the time, and I was on my way back to New York, and I was in LA at the airport when 9/11 happened. And so what ends up happening, or I was on my way to the airport, my brother-in-law tells me, turn on the TV. I turn on the TV. I see what's happening, and I end up stuck in LA for the next 3 weeks because there were, the building that I managed was smoked out and there was no communication. The lines were down. And so you mentioned that that's the year you graduated high school. Well, that's what I was doing. I actually lived in New York and worked in Manhattan at the time. And that's what ended up sending me to Alaska. My parents lived in Alaska, and I thought, let me go visit them while I figure out what's going to happen in New York. And then I met my beautiful wife. And, the running joke is that's the only good thing that I've ever heard come out of 9/11. Mr. Joe Foster of Van Eck back in the days was the first gentleman who said that to me. Is the only happy story I've heard come out of 9/11. But I say all that to say that, whoever you were, you remember where you were, and it had all sorts of different effects. So one of the big ones was the abundance of government overreach. And, we blew our deficit out going to war with countries that mostly had nothing to do with it. The one that did, we didn't touch because it was an ally. Right. And it tells you just how nasty politics can be. And here we are in 2020, and the United States 2020 deficit is projected to be 16% of GDP. That's the biggest since, guess when? 1945. 1945. The budget gap tripled nearly in the first 11 months, Nick, of fiscal 2020. It's absolute madness. And yet we have a Fed, because the markets were a bit soft this week, that is largely expected to come to the rescue, right? There's a Fed meeting that concludes this upcoming Wednesday. And, the trader bros and Robinhood people are all hoping that Sugar Daddy Jerome comes to the rescue with another fix. What do you think is going to happen at that Fed meeting? You think we get anything, Nick?
I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think that those traders you mentioned, and make no mistake, this is a narrative that is being debated, right? Like, are these quote unquote Robinhood traders impacting the market? And, the old wall or the traditionalist would tell you no, but the very real fact is that, some 50 to 80 million new trading accounts have been created in recent months. And you can just look at the volume of videos I see out there of armchair traders, etc., to know that they're in the market. And of course, the whole Dave Portnoy phenomenon. I'm not a Fed head, Gerardo, and so what more can they do? That's a question for you. Are they gonna cut? I mean, they're not even thinking about rates. Are they going to zero? I mean, they're already in the market buying corporate debt, bonds and funds through private companies. What's next? Are you talking? Are you intimating a further rate cut?
I think they'll posture the possibility of one. I don't think they'll actually.
It's a little premature.
Absolutely. I think it is a little premature, but I think the market will eventually force the Fed's hand the way it has every single time, because it knows that Powell is a slave to the broader U.S. indices. And so I do believe that we get some sort of language that hints to the fact that there are, what they always say, additional tools, that could include further rate cuts and more special purpose vehicles, which is just a changing of the law to make legal what was illegal for a very long time, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got a quasi-government entity in there tinkering around with markets. What do you call it? Nationalizing risk or whatever, right? And so eliminating price discovery. And no one knows how it'll end. That's why these conversations are interesting. I don't pretend to know what's next, but like you say, we can tell you that this is unprecedented and that's not what the law calls for. And they're doing things that are outside of the scope of their mandate and that are untested just because they've never been done before. And so that's why it's so interesting. And also, textbook good for gold, right? These additional tools are like, additional tools or additional fuel. I'm going to do something with that.
There's a lot to do. Let's talk about gold. Gold is reloading, the famous words of Mr. Scarface. It closed at 1942. It dipped down, I believe, as low as the 1915 level. The 1936 level, these past few hours. 1914 for the week was the low. And so, I think it's consolidating beautifully. On days where the dollar has showed some strength, gold has held up well. On days where the dollar has been soft, gold hasn't done much. It goes up, it pulls right back. But I think it's reloading. I do think that the next couple of weeks are going to bring increased volatility to the upside and the downside, and we need it. The sideways consolidation is not sustainable, just like the moves in the broader indices are. We're not going to have relative stability going into the election cycle, which, we're a couple of months away now. So expect some choppy trading, but expect higher prices. There's a lot of people out there that don't believe gold touches $2,000 again this year. I'll take the other side of that. If we just hold these levels, it really won't matter with the amount of news that we have coming from some of our favorite names in the space, right?
Yeah, which I know you want to talk about, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on the gold price because it's doing just what you say. It's been consolidating now for a couple of weeks, and if consolidation at the former past price is the new baseline, then all good, which we've said for a couple of weeks, and so just keep an eye on it. It's consolidating.
Absolutely. What's not consolidating is copper. Copper looks really, really, really good. And this precludes any major stimulus efforts. As I expect, there will be many globally. And it's, 306 a pound, 307 is the 30-day high. I like me some gold and copper juniors, Nick.
I know you do, and even the larger companies, really across the gamut, have done well. I was just, and I don't talk about Rio Tinto a lot, but I was writing an issue this week where Rio Tinto was in the portfolio, and it's done exceedingly well as a top 10 copper producer, and so from production all the way down to the exploration, which we'll talk about in a second. It's a good time to be in the copper space.
It is, especially if you have some good gold action going along with it, right? And I think the one obvious one, and one that should have assays here in the next, I'll speculate the next 7 to 14 days, and it's one that we've mentioned often. I think soon the market will realize why, is Chakana copper. They're going to release what I believe will be excellent results because of the predictability of these tourmaline breccia pipes. I think that they're going to release excellent results in a market that, frankly, they've never had to release these types of results into. They've had some blockbuster results in the past, but not in this type of market. It's a different beast when you're talking 306 copper and 1943 gold, 1942 gold. So Chakana copper is one that's moved up a little bit in the last 30 days, but it's nowhere near with the market cap of 58 million Canadian, where I believe it ends up at the end of September. We will see if that is proven correct. I think we'll know sooner rather than later. Any names that you like, whether it's copper, gold, any combination thereof?
Oh goodness, Gerardo, what have we done recently?
Wrote a bunch of checks.
I know. So, what do we want to go into? That the Regulus, I was researching the stars recently, right? Regulus and Aldebaran are two good copper speculations in South America. Chakana, I'm a shareholder of as well, and so those are some really good names to start to take a look at, albeit on the smaller side. I of course mentioned Rio Tinto. On the gold side, I know you want to talk about results, so we can just stick with that. You and I were talking before we press record about Millrock, which is drilling adjacent to the Pogo mine up there in Alaska, and the first couple of holes have been smoke. You often hear about smoke but not fire, and a little bit of disappointment. Frankly, I had been concerned about the trading action, and then some very low mineralized holes this week, I think, cause investors to lose faith, and that was apparent in the share price, which ticked down to around 16 cents or so, maybe even 15 cents today, whereas it was 23, 24 cents when drilling was announced. And so those first couple of holes weren't the most inspiring, right? But there's a lot of work to be done. Like you said, it's a giant land package. I think people forget that the spend on that project for this year is $5 million, right, for Resolution to keep earning in. And so a lot of work to be done and a lot of holes yet to come. And another one would be Nevada Sunrise, which you should talk about, and New Placer Dome.
I shall. Let's start with Millrock, because I think that, and this isn't really on Millrock. They're the operator, but Resolution is the majority partner that's calling the shots, and they put themselves in a bit of a box. They had announced previously, Resolution had, that they would report 2 holes at a time, which is what they did. And I think that now looking back, sure, that would have been great had you hit a discovery hole right off the bat. But once you realized you didn't have that, I really wish they wouldn't have put themselves in that corner, because I think it would have been beneficial to the trading action and the share price, and painting a broader picture on what is a vast land package. It would have been beneficial for them to put out maybe, the first 6, 7, 8 holes once all those were in, given that a lot of these holes were kilometers apart. And so I think if you're painting a picture for a potential gold camp and you're drilling holes kilometers apart, it's probably not the best idea to release 2 holes at a time. But that's just my take. And again, I'm kind of Monday night quarterbacking this thing, right? Sure. Where I'm looking back with some soft results early on. I will say this: all it takes is 1 hole, and that's 15, 16 cent price will be a thing of the past really quick. So drilling is ongoing. They have assays pending. Let's see if they stick with that every 2-hole kind of approach. And yeah, we'll see what happens there. You touched on
I think
Sunrise.
people, one more thing on Millrock. I
Yeah,
think people wanted news because it was interrupted, right? We were sort of left hanging with the whole suspended because of the whole COVID outbreak, right? And so the market was like, had bated breath, right? They wanted those results, which I would assume is why Greg did it that way.
Agreed. And then you mentioned 2 companies that are partnering on one project, and New Placer Dome Gold, of course, operator and 80% owner of Kinsley Mountain, which I am extremely excited about. And I believe that those assays are expected in late September or early October, which is fast approaching. 3 rigs turning. They're looking for high-grade extensions at the Western Flank Zone, which has had some incredible intercepts. I've gone over this in the past on this podcast, so I won't again, but look out for those. But they're also now, with this 3rd rig, doing some wildcat exploration drilling, which is, deeper drilling all around the property. And that's extremely exciting to me because I've always believed that there's more than one zone. It's not just one high-grade zone. I think there's oxide potential. I think there's sulfide potential at depth in different types of systems and in different parts of the property. And we're going to know soon. But before that, we're going to get results, I think, probably next week, if they're true to their word about when results were coming, from the Bolo property, which is also in Nevada. And, that's a project that had some good numbers in the past. Some of it was confirmation of historic drilling, but some of the numbers that came back, frankly, in this price environment were pretty darn impressive. And I'd be curious to see how the next week plays out for New Placer Dome Gold. I would look for results on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If they're positive, something to look out for. I hear whispers of excitement, but everybody's excited, right?
Sure, it's a bull market.
It's a bull market is absolutely right. I know you had bigger fish to fry and bigger problems and situations to deal with this week, but did you get a chance to see the clip of, football's back, right? Everybody is excited. It's America's sport. We had the Texans and the Chiefs, and, there was a moment where, okay, we're not going to kneel. We're not going to not come out from the locker room. We're all going to hold hands in the middle of the field pregame and just acknowledge that we don't want racism. We're all for equality and justice. Let's stop with, all the stuff that people said. The kneeling is disrespectful to the flag and, the people that have served, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. So the NFL did not do that this time around. They just had the players come out. The players wanted this. They negotiated for this and all held hands, both teams. That got boos from the crowd. Did you see that clip?
I didn't see the clip, but I read about it. And you're not going to make the people happy. At least you're not going to make half of them happy, right? Like, you did an interview with someone this week or maybe it was last week, I don't know what day it is anymore, who mentioned politics in the interview. And I was talking to someone who said, why would they mention politics in the interview? It's just the sort of the climate we're in, right? I'm sure there were people in the crowd who absolutely loved it, but we're in this place now where every protest needs a counter protest, Gerardo. And so if there's people that are clapping it, I'm sure there was someone there of another political stripe who had to boo it, especially when you got the whole Kaepernick, which was a story I did see this week. And he was included in Madden this week, right? The game, the highly popular video game, even though he's still a free agent. And that would be sort of another finger in the eye from the NFL to the whole movement. In from my perspective, really is, you're negotiating with the players, you're quasi allowing them to express themselves. I saw the Miami Dolphins are going to stay in the locker room while the national anthem is playing for their opener, and you're trying to make real progress. Meanwhile, the figure who sort of, quote unquote, started it all, and also, has the stats to be a tier 1 quarterback, which is inarguable in my mind. I'm not a football guy. I could just read the numbers, right? It's still not signed. And so, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth overall for the NFL. And I don't know if that's the way you wanted to go with this conversation, but nonetheless, that was a great gesture, right? Holding hands on the field is a positive. And we're at a point politically where, you can't make certain groups happy, and people are very vociferous. There's a lot of Karens out there on both sides, and so you get boos.
And people believe that if they disagree with an opinion, they're entitled to make demands. And so, again, let me personalize this for you all. Everybody knows that I write several newsletters, 2 newsletters for the Outsider Club, premium newsletters, and so paid newsletters. And so people pay for ideas and facts and viewpoints. And if you don't believe that the political landscape affects the Fed or monetary policy or fiscal policy, then I don't know what planet you live in. I don't know why, you don't just write your own newsletter. But again, even then, I am willing to entertain. The gentleman that I interviewed is a legend in our space, Mr. Bob Bishop. And his comment during that interview was a brief one, and it was factual. What he said was, we have a gentleman that's a reality show host and star that is running the country as if he's still searching for ratings. That seemed pretty factual, but let's just pretend it was inaccurate. Mr. Bishop has the right to his opinion. Had he said, Mr. Trump is the finest president that I've seen in my lifetime, I would have disagreed respectfully, but I would not have edited the comment because it doesn't really matter to me what your personal opinion about the current political landscape is as it relates to your personal situation. I'm interviewing you because I want to get your opinion about a number of things. And if that's a point that you wish to express, you have every right to express it. I could interview somebody and they could tell me during the interview, you know what, Gerardo, I agreed to this interview because I had stuff to get off my chest. And one of those things is, I think your interview style is trash. And I would say, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I'm glad that you're on here because I got some really important things to talk with you about. My point being, I am not in the habit or business and never will be of editing anybody's free speech. That's not what I do. So I had a subscriber write in who wrote in and said, I just subscribed to your newsletter. I was extremely disappointed that Mr. Bishop echoed a political sentiment and then put in all caps, which is, I guess, the equivalent of yelling, remove all political commentary from your newsletter now, or I will unsubscribe. And this will show me how seriously you take your subscribers. So I politely responded to customer service and said, can somebody get this fucking bum off my mail list? Give him a refund on me. I asked Nick if I could do it because Nick runs the show over at Outsider Club. What was your response, Nick?
Of course.
Of course. And so, Mr. Whoever the fuck you are, I hope you enjoyed the free issue, and I hope that the picks make you some money. And you know what? It's okay to disagree. I have zero problems disagreeing or having, different points of views on things. I have several close friends that are Trump supporters for one reason or another. Not a problem. They have their reasons. I have several friends that think Biden and Kamala are, God's gift to saving America, which I disagree with as well. They have the right to that opinion. What you don't get to do is come to my place of business and demand that the business be run a certain way. You can go kick rocks and start your own business or take your dollar somewhere else because, frankly, in that situation, your dollar isn't welcome. So I hope I'm crystal clear about the fact that it is great to disagree. You can have whatever viewpoint you have, as long as it's not violent or infringing on somebody else's safety. But when you start making demands and you start yelling, and then you're going to get a different response from me. And that was that. So yeah, we're at a point where everything is politicized. And I thought Mark Cuban said it best. Mark Cuban was asked, what do you think about the politicization of sports? And he said, the only people that I see politicizing sports are extremists on both sides, and newspaper and politician people. I don't see sports being politicized. I see the players coming out all united that they want to end racism and they stand united for justice and equality. He goes, I don't see anything controversial about that. It's everybody else trying to sell a paper or get a click or get a viewer for advertising revenue. Those are the people that are doing it. And again, especially today, on a day like 9/11, I refuse to be divided by people that will not tolerate a different viewpoint, because that's probably the same thing that we fought world wars about. One group imposing their way and their will on everyone else. And it's probably the same thing that a lot of the people that hold those opinions deep down are really trying to fight against. I get it. They think their world is changing. They think there's no place in it for them. I understand some of those concerns. They've been voiced to me by people that I respect. And I don't have to agree with it. I just know where it comes from. But yeah, you're not going to make demands on how we run our business. That's just not going to happen. So anyhow, that was that story.
Well, as a libertarian, I'm a big free speech guy. And so, you can say whatever you want. I don't have to take it seriously or literally or have feelings about it or react to it. I can simply forget it and let it go, which is something a lot of people seemingly aren't able to do. And then, we've reached a level of discourse or non-discourse in this country that is, subpar and elementary and at an 8th grade reading level. And you also got these aspects of cancel. Serious. You also got these aspects of.
I just like how you suddenly snuck that in there. I got to
cancel. You got these aspects of cancel culture where on both sides, right? Where
both sides, absolutely.
You're gonna lose your job if you publicly display your political beliefs, or we're not gonna buy your tires for this, that, and the other reason, whatever it is, right? And so, again, I'm not the solutions. I'm not the one running for president. So, I think there's a lot of things that got to be worked out. I think that the problems are surely, if not slowly, being identified. And I'm happy to watch it all play out, if not a bit disappointed in my fellow citizens.
I hope it's kind of like the gold consolidation, the past several weeks. I hope it's a reload of common sense and a reload of commonality and, just let's be neighborly, man. Let's be better to each other. We don't have to agree, whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, let's see where that goes. Some of the problems that are being identified by the Trumpster himself. Unfortunately, somebody told him it was a good idea to sit down, with one of the journalists that, is notorious, of course, for discovering some things about people that don't want things discovered, right? And so he sat down with Bob Woodward and basically in a conversation that was recorded on February the 7th, when Trump was in front of the American public and the American people telling everybody that this thing is nothing. We have 15 cases. It'll be one soon and then it'll be nothing. He's on record saying to Woodward on February the 7th, this is deadly stuff. You just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than even your strenuous flu. These are his words, guys. These aren't conspiracy theorist words that they superimposed on a deep state fake video. This is Trump saying what he knew. And again, it just speaks to the fact that for a large part of that base, words and facts don't matter because there really hasn't been any outrage by anybody that wasn't already outraged, right?
Yeah, I mean, the response was abhorrent. We talked about that from the start when the senators were dumping stocks, when they knew how bad it was. And this is confirmation that they, in fact, did know how bad it was, on through to when we saw the curve not flattening in the U.S. like it was in other countries, on through to now where, the amount of deaths and not just absolute numbers, but per capita numbers and the level of testing is, subpar to other developed countries. That's mathematical facts, right? And so, of course, he knew how deadly it was. What did I see? There was a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Oh, I saw one journalist, I guess it's more of an opinion guy, David Frum, talking about why Trump does things like that. And he was saying it translates from his business career. Bob Bishop was talking about how he's always chasing ratings or whatever as a TV star. But
that was his point, yes.
Trump as a businessman had bankruptcies multiple times. And David Frum was saying, he's used to talking his way out of it. The checks in the mail. And then, serendipitously or not, something would happen that allowed him to buy more time or miraculously come up with a capital or whatever it was that allowed him to put out that small fire and move on to his next endeavor. And so David Frum was saying Trump thinks his words can change things. And so by publicly downplaying it, he was thinking that he could either A, change it, or that two, something miraculous was going to happen, that the virus would just disappear on its own, or that science would cure it before it had a chance to do what we know it has now done. And then the last thing I would say is, again, shame on the public. We knew lots of people were telling you how dangerous this thing was in February and March. It was clear to see. And so, I get that Trump was talking to Bob Woodward back in February, but also one comment I did see that had a little bit of validation or validity in my mind was Bob Woodward was also comfortable waiting to September to sell books with that quote instead of warning everybody in February, right?
This is a fact. Fuck that guy. I don't care what he did in the 70s and, his contribution to Deep Throat, which led to, of course, the monumental movie by the same name. Fuck Bob Woodward. He should have came out and told somebody. I mean, if that was the case, because again, this is February. We really didn't have an idea of as the general public of what this could be, and fortunately, the mortality rate hasn't been what many feared, but that's a near hit. George Carlin used to always say, "It's not a near miss. Shouldn't it be a near hit?" That's a near hit, and we dodged one in that sense. But it's clear that back in early February, they believed that it would be deadlier than what it turned out to be. And again, no disrespect to anybody that's been affected. My oldest son lost a 23-year-old friend who was perfectly healthy and in shape and active, and unfortunately caught this because an aunt came over to his house. One of his aunts came to his house and gave him a hug. Somebody that didn't believe this thing was real. And he caught it. And yes, he was an anomaly, but an anomaly that passed, unfortunately. And so I'm not, go ahead.
And neither am I. And there's going to be lasting effects, which we're only now starting to see a little tiny bit of. Like, there's been professional athletes with heart malfunctions and things post coronavirus. I've even seen like some eye issues, glaucoma and stuff. So, the deaths are tragic and horrible, and could have been prevented, and there could have been fewer of them. But there's also going to be lasting damage as well that we can't even calculate yet.
Absolutely. No, and that's a great point, Nick. And we won't know, frankly, for decades, right? Just like with 9/11, bringing it back to that point. We didn't know just how bad it would be for first responders that did everything and above what was asked of them in getting in there and trying to save as many lives as possible. And again, because of our political class, the champion of trying to get these first responders compensation and medical care ended up having to be Jon Stewart. Unreal. This is where we're at in our society and our political class that's been elected to represent us. Jon Stewart, former host of The Daily Show, ends up being the biggest political voice for these first responders because neither side is willing to do what's necessary to get this passed. And yes, there were people on each side that wanted to do things, but when it mattered and it came time to vote, there wasn't a majority for whatever reason. And again, it just speaks to the nastiness in U.S. politics right now.
Oh, absolutely. And that was a year ago now, which I was shocked to see that it's been a year since that happened already, the Jon Stewart getting that legislation through. But yeah, like you say, they're still on vacation. And so benefits are running out. The states that tried to get extended benefits are now starting to run out. And, job losses are turning permanent by the millions. And it's ticking time bomb until some more depression level stuff happens, and I'm interested to see the response.
Congress is still on vacation, right?
That's right.
Got it. Meanwhile, in other news, China prefers that Tik Tok not be sold to the U.S. They'd rather it be shut down. I'm really curious what's in that algorithm, Nick. They would rather lose billions of dollars than disclose what the algorithm is. And they're willing to sell it if they don't have to give up the code, which tells you that's where the sauce is, right?
For sure. And Trump says he's not going to extend the deadline for a sale, and I haven't been following
and he wants a cut. and he wants a cut. Because every fucking con man thinks they deserve a cut, right? Hey, I'm in the middle of this. I can get this passed through. I gave an extension. Where's my cut? Come on, man. Fucking clown.
And I haven't been following it much further than that, other than to say, even if this virus gets cleared up, we just press pause on a bigger issue with the trade war. Nobody talks about the Huawei anymore, and that episode is still happening. And you and I last week talked about Chinese calling for a new sovereign currency or whatever. There's still things going on in the South China Sea. Didn't China exchange warning shots with India this week?
Multiple times now in several months. Yes.
There's it's the fervor is picking up there with China. Whether with or without the virus, there's a lot to be resolved there that is going to be interesting in the years ahead, especially as they make a play on the dollar, which we were talking about last week.
I believe Trump was nominated for the Nobel Prize.
Who wasn't? Putin was nominated. BLM was nominated. Antifa was nominated. Blue Lives Matter. I mean, come on.
Did Fight the Fed Nick Hodge get a nomination?
Nah, I missed it this year.
Maybe next year. Yeah, you know what? And I'm rooting for the Trumpster on these deals that he's trying to get in the middle of, in the Middle East, trying to bring peace over there. That's a Rubik's Cube, and I'm curious to see if these deals have, any meat on the bone and if they hold. Because like a lot of the deals that are announced, remember we were supposed to have a healthcare and comprehensive immigration plan months ago. Remember when he said that? He said in 2 weeks we'll be unveiling a historic healthcare plan and comprehensive immigration reform. And I was like, great. We need both of those things in this country, right? Obama tried. It was far from perfect. It was a great conversation starter. And then they shitted all over it. And then when it comes to immigration, nobody's really done anything substantial that's positive since Ronald Reagan. And so what we have now is we're at a point where we're telling foreign students with student visas that we don't want them here. We're telling the best minds in the world that want to contribute to our society productively, we don't want them. Go back and, take that intelligence and that work ethic somewhere else. And it's just beyond me. So I hope these deals that, he's portraying himself to be in the middle of hold. If they do, he deserves credit. Him and his administration for pursuing that dialogue. And I just hope that some of that, peace brokering is brought to the U.S. here, because there's a lot of people here in this country that are itching for a fight.
100% true. City's still burning. Portland evacuating, taken back to the fires there, 500,000 people. And yeah, would love to see some resolution, but unfortunately turnings take time.
Yeah. California, Portland, Washington State, that the whole, left side of the country, basically, all the best to them. Not fun. Doesn't look like it's going to be brought under control anytime soon. And yeah, hopefully there's some sort of reasonable wind down to everything that's going on out there. Interesting times. It's a bizarro world, Nick.
That's how it is.
Do you have any positive stories? I know this was a heavier one. Again, it's 9/11. It's not like I reflect on 9/11, anything that I don't reflect on every other day. But, I did think it was important to talk about, lives lost in the political state and how inept it is and what we did in regards to privacy and the budget deficits and all of that. And, fortunately or unfortunately, there's an asymmetric bet on the other side that we're able to take advantage of in the resource space and do very well for ourselves and our subscribers. And hopefully that's something that's sustainable and we can get as many people on board. But yeah, just crazy times. Is there any good news that you can brighten us up with?
Well, hopefully we can use some of those profits from the asymmetric bets to go on vacation again once the virus is over, because I want to see some of the world's angelfish. I'm going to tell you about these angelfish for a second. If I put up a picture, you would know it. They're the fish that hang around reefs with the long, like V-shaped tails. And
Yep.
They have different colors, like bright blue and yellow, or like Nemo colored, for example. I think even I'm not sure if Nemo was an angelfish or not. He might have been. I have to look that up. But anyway, the reason that they're so colorful, and there's even more colors that we didn't know about, is because the different species of angelfish can co-produce at a higher rate than other species. Like different species of bears, don't reproduce together, right? And different species of other animals don't interproduce. But these angelfish have a high success rate when an angelfish male from one species fertilizes a female angelfish eggs from another angelfish species, and a lot of the babies survive. And when they do, they get these crazy color patterns, right? Like neon blue and black swirls, or like fluorescent orange or whatever. And so we're just now starting to figure out why we're getting all these crazy color combinations on these fish. And I'll post a link that has some really high def pictures that are pretty neat to look at. And like I say, hopefully if you have any success in the speculative market, you can go lay your eyes on some of these fish one day for real.
That would be incredible and something to look forward to, Nick. Thank you for that. That is all I got. It should be an exciting rest of the month in the junior resource space, everyone, in the gold space. I think the major U.S. indices are due for some more volatility. The bottom line is either the markets remain somewhat stable Monday, Tuesday, in hopes that Wednesday they get, some encouragement from Chairman Powell, or they're going to get really volatile thereafter if they're not satisfied with the language and the proposals. And then they're going to force the Fed's hand. And that only happens when you get drops of 10, 15%, which are, in the major U.S. indices is pretty substantial, right?
Exactly right. I'm looking forward to the weeks ahead. It's going to be as exciting as we've discussed.
Have a great week, everybody. Learn to disagree civilly with everyone so you don't get told to fuck off.
And if anyone asked, Nemo was a clownfish.
I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 86 of Bizarro World. Have a great week, everybody.
See ya.